All right, man. Let's get to a little bit more of the Derek as we look at where the Sixers are right now and some of the stuff that was said last night. What did you think of the officiating that played into this a little bit last night? Some of the tough calls. Game 1, Joel Embiid was tugged on at one point early on in the game where his jersey was pulled. No call. Didn't really affect the game overall, but it happened. And then you see it happen again in a much bigger spot in Game 2 where Tyrese Maxey was clearly had his jersey tugged on by Jalen Brunson, and they did not call it. That could have impacted the pass from Kyle Lowry. By the way, the Kyle Lowry pass, since we know that he and Nick Batum really like to get the ball in quickly, get it out of their hands, the pass wasn't bad. You just needed to call the timeout to avoid it all. It was also interrupted because if the jersey wasn't pulled on, Jalen Brunson had no chance other than maybe he gets trapped in the corner. All of that. But the officials played a part in it. A lot of Sixer fans were ticked off about the officials. Yeah. What were your thoughts in the building, watching it, and just seeing things after the fact?
So I appreciate it. Kyle gets to go on a rant that everyone's going to agree with, and now I get to be the bad guy.
A lot of people in here do agree with Kyle, by the way.
We all agree with Kyle.
Sorry that I'm just on the right side of history.
If you haven't noticed, I haven't tried to approach my profession the same way Howard Eskin does. No, look, I think officiating was bad. I'll just start off. Maxey was fouled. I think Maxey was fouled a couple times there over the course of that play. Both at the beginning when Brunson was grabbing his jersey, when essential jump ball happened there towards the end. I think there were calls all over the place that the ref should have made that would have changed the outcome of the game. I think there was a very legitimate and very valid complaint to that. I don't think the timeouts were necessarily something that the Sixers should have been awarded. And look, and on that point, because I know there's going to be a lot of Knicks fans like, oh, well, Maxey pushed off to start that. Well, Maxey pushed off because he was being grabbed. Yes. The first foul was on the Knicks.
Pushed
the reason
off,
Maxey had to push off is because they were committing a foul. Now, on to the timeouts. The first one, when Nick Nurse tried to call a timeout when Kyle Lowry was inbounding the ball, if you go back and slow-mo it, Nick Nurse he had his hands up like this for like 4 straight seconds. He was trying to keep his hands close enough that he could quickly call a timeout if he got to the point where he felt like he needed one. He did not actually touch his hands together until Kyle Lowry had already thrown the ball. If I sat there this morning like a sicko, freeze framing it, going, second by second, quarter second by quarter second. By the time Nick actually called for a timeout, Kyle had already let go of the ball. He no longer had possession of it. I blame Nick Nurse a lot on that one. If you go back and watch that play, 3 of the 4 players on the court were doing nothing. Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, Nick Batum, they were doing nothing during those 4 seconds. There was nothing going on.
I disagree on the Embiid piece.
Hold on a second. Let me finish.
I'll get there. I just wanted to let you know I disagree.
No, he didn't move at all. He didn't set a single screen. I don't know how you can disagree, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
They did nothing. I think either Nick Nurse or Kyle Lowry had to see that they were doing nothing because everything was resting in Tyrese Maxey's ability to run fast. And there's just way too much margin for error for that to go wrong, especially when you have a situation where you're not, it's not like a lot of times coaches will not call a timeout at the end of the game because they need to get a shot and because they don't want to give the other team a chance to get their best defenders on the floor and get set in half-court defense. No, here your only goal is to get the ball inbound safely. Nick Nurse is one of the most creative, out-of-bounds play callers in the league. Call a timeout, get him set up. It was clear that nobody had any idea what to do, and it was just Tyrese Maxey run around really fast. So I think Nick Nurse made a mistake, a pretty clear mistake, by waiting as long as he did, which it happens. Nobody is going to make every split-second decision correctly. You just needed either Kyle Lowry or Nick Nurse to make the correct decision. Neither of them did. Little disappointed in that. The timeout when they got the ball in bounds and Tyrese Maxey fell, I think is a little more debatable, where he might have called a timeout at the exact second that Tyrese Maxey had possession of the ball on the ground. But it was a real bang-bang play. When a player falls down, one of 3 things has to happen. Either he had to have been fouled, he had to have traveled, or somebody had to jar the ball loose and create a loss of possession. Obviously, he wasn't fouled because it wasn't called. Doesn't mean he wasn't fouled, but there was.
Well, I was going to say, hold on.
I'm correcting myself.
Hold on there a minute.
Obviously, a foul wasn't called, and obviously you don't want a travel to be called, but that means that there was a loose ball. So at that point, you have to regain possession, and Tyrese Maxey, was there a split second where maybe he regained possession before he tried to pass the ball through Josh Hart's legs? Maybe, but that's a bang-bang play that in the heat of the moment, in the time it's going on, a lot of referees are going to miss because you do have to reestablish possession. So I understand, like, I think there was an argument that there was a timeout there, but I also my overall point is there were so many mistakes. It should have never even gotten to that point. And I really do think they screwed up. I think probably when they wake up this morning, they're going to say, man, we really should have called a timeout in this spot, because I think that is undeniably the case. That being said, I do think
all right, there are too many being said.
I do think that the overall
Here's what I have
point,
to say. Boo!
That's fine.
Boo to your take.
You can be a homer and try to appease the fans. That's fine. I'm just calling like I see it. That being said, I blame the refs for not calling the foul.
Yep.
And I blame the Sixers for not calling the timeout earlier. Should have happened earlier. Like I said, there was no movement. There was no plan. You had to do that earlier.
Kyle Lowry should have called the timeout at about 3 seconds.
Absolutely.
Once he realized that he did not have that pass, call timeout. And again, I said the pass itself, when he did throw it, because he didn't rifle it at him, he just hot-potatoed it softly to get it into his hands to secure it and have the possession, so they had to foul him,
Even
trap,
Tyrese,
and even give it back.
when he's on the ground.
He could have called a timeout.
Grab the ball, call timeout. Now, I understand
done.
Tyrese not doing that because he's in the heat of moment. He's the only one actually trying to do anything in that entire time.
We're going to see a
also
picture of Derek at the next game taking a selfie with Spike Lee, and the betrayal will truly sink in.
I also thought Kyle Lowry since he's able to run the baseline, while he did leave the left side, he cut it off, went to the right side because he clearly wanted Maxey. But while the other guys weren't doing what they weren't doing, Batum and Harris, I'll get to the Embiid piece, he cut himself off there. And once he realized that wasn't there, bang, call timeout, get it over with. And my question was, I don't know what you got. There wasn't a lot of dead ball situations in there in that final minute.
Yeah.
So after the challenge was failed, did they realize that they had another timeout? Was my question, because they had
Nick
two.
Was clearly.
No, not him. The players.
Oh, okay.
Because Kyle Lowry did not call it. Tyrese Maxey did not call it.
Did try to call, but
He called it, but he's all the way on the other side.
And
it was late.
And he came after Nick Nurse.
He
like
knew
Nick
it,
Nurse's
but did
attempt
Kyle
was
and
first.
Tyrese know it, was my question. Now, as far as the Embiid piece, you said it last night. He can't move laterally. So he couldn't really do is set the screens. When Kyle went so far to the right, he could have at least, I thought, threw it into him because Hartenstein was on his back. At the very least, maybe that's an over the back. You get the foul and B goes to the free throw line. And maybe I'm reaching, but that was at least the one that, because Brunson and Hart had already retreated for Maxey, that's exactly where they were going. They weren't worried about anyone else. And that's the only reason I said Embiid was there, to at least get the ball extension. Kyle gives it to him, and also hand it back to Kyle if he has to go. Now, Batum and Harris, you're right. They did absolutely nothing. They're just standing side by side like me and Kyle, looking to see what was going on. How about you beeline to the baseline and give him at least an option, a straight line, so if he does have to come back and pass you the ball, you can do that. So that's why I disagreed on the Embiid piece.
No, but I mean, my major point was once Nick saw that nobody had any kind of a plan, he had to call a timeout.
No, I agree with you on that. I'm talking about the Embiid part was the only part I disagree with.
Sure.
I agree with you about Batum and Harris. Everything else, we're on the same page. And that was the only one that I felt that Embiid can't set a screen because Maxey's running away from him, first of all, and Embiid laterally can't move enough to go set a screen. So throw it to him. Maybe give it right back to Kyle Lowry. They start to come to him, then maybe Maxey and all of that. So that's where that's how I felt on it. But Lowry should have called timeout. Nick Nurse should have been, since he knew he had the timeout, called that timeout. And how did you feel about the challenge to lose that second timeout?
I mean, I didn't like the challenge. The one thing I wanted to push back on Derek, that he tweeted this, but also said a version of it just now, obviously. It's a bang, bang play. Yeah, but the fucking job is to evaluate bang, bang plays.
But
I don't care how slim the margins are. The job is to get it right. They're like, the screenshots and the screen grabs are all posted, right? The jersey pull, the Nick on the sideline, when the ball's inbounds. To your point, the one point I agree with you on, when they're trying to get it in, he was way too soft and passive. It was like a check swing almost.
He specifically didn't want to call a timeout there because he wanted to see if they could get it in, and he waited too long.
And so that one, that's the harder argument to make, because they should have gotten a timeout there. Yep. I understand it was a very slim moment with Tyrese on the ground with the ball, but that one is Nick forcefully calling a timeout. That one,
yes, but I'm not even sure if he had possession. I'm not even sure if he had control because he landed and was in a motion of passing it away. My point is, you had a way of bang, bang plays are never going to be 100% right. You're never going to make 100% of the correct decisions. refs are never going to make 100% of the right calls. You had a way of avoiding all of that. It was very easy. It was very obvious. You just needed one of the 6 people involved to take that path, and none of them did. And if I was a Sixers fan, look, it's easy to get mad at refs. And I think you should be mad at refs for the fouls. I think there are multiple fouls they should have and could have called. But I would also be a little bit disappointed in the coaches and the players for not executing a thing that should be a relatively basic decision. You're not getting anywhere on the out-of-bounds play. 4 seconds out of a gun ball, call a fucking timeout. I would be frustrated as well. That was a blown opportunity.
Yeah. Look, end of the day, we can sit here and we could yell about what's the reason and who to blame. Whatever. They lost.
But again,
it's 0-2.
Mm-hmm.
I like it, if we were a radio station. Well, can Nick Nurse win a championship in Philly? Give us a call. Let us know. None of us are saying that. People make mistakes all the time, or bad decisions, or questionable decisions in the heat of the moment. But man, for every fucking one of them to go against you last night, it was a heartbreak. It was an absolute heartbreak.
And by the way, the difference between, because I saw some people last night saying things along the lines of like, Nick's been skating because he's not Doc Rivers. Like, that time's over. It's like, well, their game plan coming into this series is about as good as it could possibly be, right? New York cannot score in the half court. Their offense has been atrocious. They've shut down their number 1 player, and I will say it for the 15th time on this show. Give New York's role players and the team overall their credit for shooting well beyond their normal percentages, for making the hustle plays, that's great. And I understand why Knicks fans love this team so much. If you just took this exact team and just transferred it to Philadelphia and put Sixers jerseys on it, they would be folk heroes in Philly. Like New Yorkers love them for the same reasons we would. They're very similar sensibilities in a lot of ways between the two teams, and I get all that. But the Sixers have to feel just like so shitty today, not having stolen one of those on the road.
We all silly like the mayor.